Okay, so 847 Fillmore Street. You sent us quite the collection of stuff on this place. Architectural plans,
Hmm.
historical records,
Mhm.
newspaper clippings. There's even some stuff about, like, communist activity. Wild. It's like a little time capsule of San Francisco packed into one address, huh?
It really is amazing how one location can capture so much of a city's history. We're not just talking about like bricks and mortar here, but the lives and events that shaped this house and I guess were shaped by it in return.
Exactly. So our deep dive today, it's all about piecing that story together, from Victorian beginnings to modern renovations with, scandals, fires, and evictions throughout. Over a century of San Francisco history as seen through just one address.
Right. And I think a good place to start would be with the house's origins. You might be surprised to learn that 847 Fillmore, it wasn't always alone. It had a twin.
Twin houses. Okay, you have my attention.
Yeah, so in 1893, there were these two identical Queen Anne style mansions side by side, 837 and 847 Fillmore Street, both designed by the same architects. These grand homes were commissioned by, well, one was by August Jungblut, a billiards table maker, and the other was by David Factor, a saloon owner.
That's such an interesting pairing. A billiards table maker and a saloon owner living in, like, identical mansions. I feel like there's got to be a story there.
There's definitely a lot to unpack. Interestingly, both Jungblut and Factor, they were members of this German shooting club called the Schützenverein. I mean, these were men who clearly appreciated precision and craftsmanship, both in their hobbies and, well, as we'll see, in their professions as well.
Okay, so we've got these grand Victorian twins built for marksmen, but I imagine their stories kind of diverged over time.
But absolutely right. They're like siblings who take different paths in life, right?
Hmm.
These houses, they evolved in really distinct ways. 837, for instance, became very closely tied to August Jungblut and his billiards table business.
A jumplet. We have some info on his company in the materials you sent. It sounds like he was like a major player in San Francisco's, billiard scene back in the day.
Yeah, Junglit's company, it was more than just a local operation. It was a real fixture in the late 19th, early 20th century San Francisco. I mean, his workshop was right next to his home at 833 Fillmore. He produced these beautifully crafted tables. They were known for their quality and artistry. I mean, picture it, hand-carved details, intricate inlays. He used the finest mahogany and maple.
Those tables must be worth a fortune now. I'm imagining antique collectors just, drooling over those.
You're not wrong. Junglit's tables, they're considered highly valuable antiques. They represent this level of craftsmanship and artistry that's just it's hard to find in today's mass-produced world. They're like the handcrafted artisanal counterpart to the tables you'd see from companies like Brunswick. A company like Brunswick focused more on innovation and efficiency to meet this growing demand.
I see what you mean. It's so fascinating to see that contrast. Even way back then, you had this individual craftsman creating these unique pieces, and then companies like Brunswick, they're scaling up production to meet the needs of a much larger market.
It really speaks to the different approaches to craftsmanship and business that were emerging at the time. Jungblut, he represented this more localized, detail-oriented approach, whereas Brunswick, they symbolized the rise of industrialization and mass production. And in a way, you could argue that same tension between handcrafted and mass-produced goods still exists today, right?
Oh, absolutely. It really makes you think about the value we place on things that are unique, things that are handcrafted versus those, mass-produced goods. It's a choice we make every day, whether we're buying furniture, clothing, food.
Yeah, it's true. And it's also a reminder that while technology and innovation they've brought us so much in terms of convenience, there's still this allure, this magic to things that are made with skill and attention to detail, like those Jungblut tables.
Right. So Jung Blue built this whole billiards empire from his home on Fillmore, crafting these beautiful tables that people are still searching for today. What about his neighbor at 847? What path did that house take?
Well, that's where we meet another really fascinating character, a man named Henry Reedon. He owned 847 Fillmore in the early 1900s, a time of, well, massive upheaval for San Francisco.
Ah, Reedon. He was the fire commissioner during the 1906 earthquake and fire, right? Can only imagine the challenges he must have faced during that catastrophic event.
He was. It's hard to even imagine. So after the earthquake and fire destroyed the fire department station, well, Reedon's own home at 847 Fillmore, it actually became their temporary headquarters. The place he lived became this command center for the city's recovery.
Wow. So in a way, 847 Fillmore was literally at the heart of San Francisco's rebuilding.
It was. And for his service, Reedon, he was actually presented with a magnificent gold badge, as they called it. It was a symbol of his leadership and his courage during that crisis.
Yeah, that's incredible. It seems like 847 Fillmore keeps attracting these people who find themselves at the center of big moments in history. Speaking of big moments, our sources, they mentioned something about the Young Communist League using this very house in the 1930s. Talk about a plot twist.
It is. The YCL, led by this really fiery speaker named Benny Dobbs, they held meetings at 847 Fillmore. They advocated for worker rights, revolution, I mean, a really radical shift in the social order.
Communist revolutionaries meeting in a grand Victorian mansion. That's quite a visual, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was the political climate like in San Francisco back then? What was the environment that allowed a group like the YCL to even flourish?
Well, you have to remember the 1930s, it was a period of major social and economic upheaval, not just in San Francisco, but across the nation. The Great Depression had left so many unemployed, so many disillusioned. It created this fertile ground for radical movements to take root, like the YCL.
So you've got this backdrop of economic hardship, social unrest, and you have these young people meeting in secret, discussing revolution, dreaming of a different future. It's a powerful image.
It is, and it really makes you wonder, what drew these people to this ideology? Was it a genuine belief in this idea of a communist utopia, or was it more of a response to the very real struggles they were facing?
Maybe a bit of both, right? Like a blend of idealism and pragmatism. But these meetings, they weren't just casual gatherings. Our sources mentioned something about detectives, like eavesdropping on the YCL. They even installed listening devices in the house.
You're right. The authorities, they were definitely concerned. They installed these things called dictographs in 847 Fillmore to secretly record the meetings, hoping to gain insights into their plans and maybe even use those recordings as evidence.
That sounds like something out of a spy novel. What were they actually talking about in these meetings? Did the recordings reveal anything significant?
Well, those recordings, they actually give us a pretty fascinating glimpse into the YCL and how they operated. I mean, you can hear Dobbs, he's urging his comrades to mobilize, to organize strikes, to infiltrate, unions, even churches. He truly believed that revolution was imminent.
Our sources even include some direct quotes from Dobbs, right? What kind of language was he using?
His speeches, they were full of this revolutionary rhetoric. He talked about things like disarming the capitalists and arming the workers. I mean, he even declared that the Red Revolution is closer than anyone thinks.
Wow, that's some pretty strong language. You can almost feel the passion and intensity of those gatherings. It must have been a really tense time for those involved, knowing that they were being recorded, that anything they said could be used against them.
Wow, it was a risky game they were playing. And, well, as we know, Dobbs's predictions of revolution, they were premature. He, along with other members of the Communist Party, was later arrested under the Smith Act during the Red Scare.
The Smith Act. Remind me what that was.
The Smith Act, it was passed in 1940. It basically made it a crime to advocate for the overthrow of the U.S. government. And it was used a lot during the Red Scare to suppress communist and socialist activities.
So even though Dobbs was advocating for things like, worker rights, things that are considered basic rights today during that era, it was seen as a threat to national security.
That's right. The Red Scare, it created this whole climate of fear and paranoia. Any association with communism, however tenuous, could get you in trouble. It's really a chilling reminder of how quickly freedoms can be eroded in times of perceived crisis.
Yeah, it makes you think about how historical context shapes our understanding of what's acceptable or what's dangerous, right?
Yeah.
It makes 847 Fillmore's connection to the Red Scare all the more, intriguing. This house has seen some truly pivotal moments in American history.
It really has. And as we'll see, its story is, well, it's far from over.
We've been talking about 847 Fillmore and, its connections to the Red Scare, but earlier we mentioned that this house, it had a twin. What happened to 837 Fillmore during those turbulent times? Did it also become like a hotbed of political activity?
It seems like 837 Fillmore took a a different path. While its twin was hosting these, clandestine meetings, attracting all this attention from the authorities, 837 it stayed pretty closely tied to its original owner, August Jungblut,
Yeah.
and his famous billiards table company.
Oh, right. Joan Bluth and his incredible craftsmanship. It's amazing to think that these beautifully crafted tables were being made right next door to a house that was, like, at the same time hosting secret communist gatherings.
Yeah, it highlights the contrasting forces at play in San Francisco during that era. On one hand, you had this traditional craftsmanship of Joan Bluth, representing this individualistic entrepreneurial spirit, and on the other, you had the collective ideology of the YCL, advocating for this radical social change.
It's a fascinating juxtaposition. You have these two houses built side by side, each representing a different facet of the city's, its identity.
And it's a good reminder that history, it's rarely this neat and linear narrative. It's messy, full of contradictions and unexpected convergences.
Speaking of John Bluth's business, you mentioned his workshop was right next door to his residence at 833 Fillmore. Was it a separate building, or were they somehow connected, the workshop and the residence?
Well, the sources indicate that while they had separate addresses, they were basically connected. Jumblut's family, they played a really active role in the business, it seems like. Like his daughter Emma and her husband even lived in one of the units at 837 after they got married.
So it was like a real family affair. They were living and working side by side, creating these beautiful tables that, well, would eventually become these sought-after antiques. And we talked about their value before, but what specifically made Jungbluth's tables so unique, so desirable?
Well, Jungbluth's tables, they were known for their intricate designs and the high quality materials. They often featured these Victorian era ornamentations, like floral and geometric patterns. And that adds to their historical significance and their value today. I mean, each table, it was basically a functional work of art, meticulously crafted.
It makes you wonder who played on those tables back in the day, right? Were they in saloons, private clubs, maybe even in some of those grand Victorian mansions popping up all over San Francisco?
I know. You can just picture these tables in, the most elegant establishments in the city,
Yeah.
the places where San Francisco's elite would gather to
Mhm.
socialize, to conduct business, maybe even have a little friendly competition.
It's such a fascinating glimpse into a bygone era. It's like you can almost hear the click of the billiard balls and the murmur of conversations, over clinking glasses.
Yeah, it's a reminder that these houses, these objects, they all hold these echoes of past lives and experiences.
And so we've been so focused on 847 Fillmore, and it's kind of dramatic history. But I'm also curious to know more about its twin. Did 837 undergo any significant transformations over the years, or did it manage to kind of preserve that original, that Victorian character?
Well, while 847, it faced fires, political intrigue, a major renovation, 837, it seems to have had a quieter existence. I mean, the records do indicate that it was converted into a multifamily dwelling at some point, probably after Jumbluth's time,
Yeah.
but it remained primarily, a residential property.
So from a grand single-family mansion to a multifamily dwelling.
Yeah.
Another example is how these houses kind of adapted to the city's changing needs. It makes you think about all the families that lived there, and the stories they could tell.
Absolutely. I mean, each generation leaves its mark on a place, adding to its layers of history and meaning.
It's a reminder that every house has a story, and those stories they're often intertwined with the larger narrative of the community, of the city where it stands.
Yeah. And speaking of stories, there's another really intriguing chapter in 847 Fillmore's history that we haven't really explored yet. A chapter that reveals a kind of a darker side of San Francisco's wartime experience.
You're talking about World War II, right? We have some materials on that, but I'm definitely eager to hear your insights on this. What role did 847 Fillmore play during that tumultuous period?
Well, during World War II, after the forced removal of Japanese Americans from Japan, well, city inspectors, they visited 847 Fillmore, expecting to find more Japanese families hiding there.
That's heartbreaking. So they were looking for one displaced group and ended up finding another. Who were these families?
Well, instead of Japanese Americans, they found black families who had migrated from the South, looking for wartime jobs. I mean, the house, once a symbol of Victorian grandeur, it was now severely overcrowded. Families were crammed into every available space. It created these really hazardous living conditions.
The materials you sent, they include some pretty stark descriptions from the inspectors' reports. They paint a really bleak picture of what life was like inside 847 Fillmore at that time.
They do. I mean, one inspector described the situation as appalling, noting that the residents, they were living constantly under the threat of a fire. Another one even said that he would be afraid to strike a match up there, highlighting the extreme fire hazard from the overcrowding.
It's a sobering reminder of the hardships that so many face during that era, especially those who are already marginalized.
Hmm.
It also it shows the complexities of wartime policies and their sometimes unintended consequences.
It does. And tragically, even though there was this general eviction ban in place because of the housing shortage, the city still served eviction orders to these families, further compounding their difficulties.
It's hard to fathom the level of uncertainty and fear they must have experienced, fleeing hardship in the South, only to face discrimination and displacement in their new home.
It's a stark reminder of the challenges of racial and economic inequality, even in a city as progressive as San Francisco.
And it makes 847 Fillmore's connection to these events all the more, poignant. It's not just a house. It's a witness to the struggles and triumphs of those who called it home.
It is, and as we'll see, the house it would continue to bear witness to the changing face of San Francisco in the years to come.
And we've been talking about some pretty heavy stuff, communist meetings, the Red Scare, wartime displacement. It's a lot to absorb. Maybe we can shift gears just for a moment and talk a bit more about the architectural evolution of 847 Fillmore.
I think that's a great idea. A little architectural respite might be just what we need.
So we know that the house was originally built in the Queen Anne style, which was popular in the late 19th century. Can you remind us the key characteristics of that architectural style?
Sure. Imagine a house with all these elaborate details, intricate woodwork, a touch of whimsy even. Queen Anne homes, they were known for their asymmetry, their use of a variety of textures and materials and decorative elements like turrets and towers and gables.
I always loved those Victorian houses. They have so much personality, so much charm. Do we have any visuals of what 847 Fillmore actually looked like in its original glory?
Yeah, the sources you provided, they include some really wonderful sketches and photographs from different periods. They offer a really fascinating glimpse into the its architectural journey.
What do they show? Can you kind of describe the house as it originally stood?
Sure. So, imagine this grand three-story structure.
Yeah.
It has this prominent corner tower. It's adorned with these decorative shingles and it's capped with this really distinctive finial. The facade, it boasted these intricate bay windows, elaborately carved details, and it had this real sense of verticality that was emphasized by those tall, narrow windows and those steep roof lines.
Sounds beautiful, like something out of a fairy tale.
Hmm.
And it's twin at 837. That would be an identical, right?
That's right. They were designed to be, mirror images of each other, sharing all those same architectural elements, that corner tower, the bay windows, the ornate detailing. Together, they must have had this really stunning visual impact on Fillmore Street.
It's incredible to imagine these two grand mansions, standing side by side, like representing the epitome of Victorian elegance. It makes you wonder what the street even looked like back then. Were there other Victorian homes nearby, or were these twins kind of unique to the area?
Well, they weren't alone. I mean, you've probably seen pictures of San Francisco's famous, what they call the Painted Ladies. Those are Victorian and Edwardian houses that embody that same era of architectural development. 837 and 847 Fillmore, they were part of a similar wave that transformed San Francisco in the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
So they were part of a larger trend, a movement that really shaped the the city's its aesthetic. It's amazing how these architectural styles they really reflect the social and economic forces at play during a particular period, you know?
Absolutely. And those painted ladies, they're now one of San Francisco's like most iconic landmarks, attracting visitors from all over the world. It's fascinating to think that 847 Fillmore, it was part of that same architectural heritage.
Okay, so we've got these twin Victorian mansions, symbols of a booming San Francisco. And we know 847, it went through some pretty dramatic changes over time, especially after that 1964 fire. What about 847? Did it also undergo these major renovations, or did it manage to kind of retain more of its original appearance?
Well, the sources they mostly focus on 847 Fillmore, but it's probably safe to assume that 847 has also been updated over the years to meet modern building codes and the changing needs of its residents.
Right, right. Every generation they leave their mark, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not as dramatic as losing a whole floor, but still, each renovation it adds a new layer to a house's story.
Exactly. It's part of what makes these older homes so fascinating. They're like living palimpsests
Yeah.
with traces of the past woven into their very structure.
It's making me really curious about the current state of these twin houses. Do we know anything about their interiors or what they look like today?
Unfortunately, the materials don't provide much detail about 837's interior. However, we can glean some insights from 847 Fillmore's its recent renovation. It was done in 2024 by the Kyle Hill Design Group.
Ah, yes, the modern makeover. Did they try to restore 847 to its original its Victorian splendor, or did they go in a completely different direction?
Well, the renovation, it was all about finding a balance. They wanted to preserve the essence of the Victorian era, but also create a space that met the demands of modern living. So it's kind of like a dialogue between the past and the present, where historical elements are celebrated and reinterpreted, for contemporary context.
Ooh, that sounds like my kind of aesthetic. What specific details can you share about the renovation? I'm dying to hear more.
Well, the renovation was pretty extensive. I mean, they installed new oak hardwood floors throughout. They updated the kitchens and bathrooms with these high-end appliances and fixtures, and they incorporated these modern lighting upgrades and really stylish matte black hardware. It's just this beautiful blend of old world charm and contemporary sophistication.
So they kept the bones of the Victorian structure, but modernized the interiors. Very. What else did they do?
Well, they were really careful to preserve and highlight the home's original Victorian features. Those ornate corbels, the moldings, the fireplaces. They're all still there, creating this visual reminder of the home's its heritage within this contemporary setting.
I love that. It's all about respecting the past, but embracing the present, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like they really struck a perfect balance.
They did, and to enhance that connection to the outdoors, they also added this amazing rooftop deck. They crafted it from sustainable IP wood.
The rooftop deck. We talked about that before. I can only imagine the views from up there.
Oh, it's incredible. Imagine yourself on that deck surrounded by the cityscape, and you have this panoramic view that includes a picture perfect vista of City Hall. It's really breathtaking.
Wow, that sounds incredible. A rooftop deck with those views, especially during sunset. I bet it's something special.
Oh, it's the perfect spot to just, enjoy San Francisco's beauty, but also to kind of reflect on the layers of history that have unfolded, below.
And speaking of history, I'm curious about that period between, World War II and that transformative 1964 fire.
Yeah.
What was happening at 847 Fillmore during those years? Did it settle into like a period of quiet domesticity, or were there other noteworthy events?
Well, it seems like those years they were kind of a blend of everyday life and echoes of the past. The sources they mentioned that during the mid 20th century, 847 Fillmore, it was more than just a residence. For a time, it housed a barbershop on the ground floor, and later on, the owner, a man named Hilton McCobb, he actually ran a bail bonds business from the premises.
A barbershop and a bail bonds business all in the same house. That's quite a mix.
It is. It definitely adds to the eclectic nature of 847 Fillmores, its history. It's a reminder that behind these grand facades there were ordinary people living their lives, running their businesses, creating their own stories.
Yeah, it kind of humanizes the house, doesn't it? It's not just a historical landmark. It's a place where people worked, where they dreamed, where they went about their daily routines.
Yeah, and it's often those everyday stories that get overlooked, but they're just as important as those grand historical narratives.
So we've got this image of 847 Fillmore in the 1950s and 60s, right? This Victorian mansion with a barbershop on the ground floor and a bail bonds business operating, from within. It's a fascinating juxtaposition of old and new, much like the city itself during that era.
It speaks to the adaptability of these historic homes. I mean, they've served a variety of purposes over the years, reflecting the changing needs of the community.
Before we move on, can we maybe delve a little deeper into the fire that damaged 847 Fillmore in 1964?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more about that event and its impact on the house.
Sure. So the fire, it broke out in a first floor back room while the owner, Hilton Cobb, was working in his barbershop. And thankfully no one was seriously injured, but the fire, it did cause a lot of damage, particularly to the fourth floor, which was ultimately lost.
Do we know what caused the fire? Was it electrical? Was it an accident? Or was there something more, suspicious going on?
Well, the sources don't really give us a definitive answer. Firefighters, they were unable to determine the exact cause.
So it remains a bit of a mystery.
Yeah, a mystery that adds another layer of intrigue to 847 Fillmore's already fascinating story.
The 1964 fire was undoubtedly a turning point for the house. It led to the loss of its fourth floor, a significant alteration to its original structure. But as you mentioned earlier, from the ashes of that fire, a new chapter emerged, a chapter of transformation and renewal.
Exactly. While the fire was obviously destructive, it also created this opportunity for the house to evolve. It paved the way for the modern renovation that we talked about earlier, where the rooftop deck replaced that lost floor and the stucco cladding gave the house a more contemporary aesthetic.
It's like the house itself was reborn, right?
Yeah.
Emerging from the fire with this new sense of purpose and style.
Yeah, a beautiful metaphor for resilience and adaptation. And it brings us to the present day. With 847 Fillmore, it stands as this testament to the enduring spirit of a house that's really seen it all.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive. The twin houses' origins, their divergent paths, communist meetings, wartime displacement, fires, renovations, even a barbershop and a bail bonds business. It's amazing how one address can encompass so much history.
It's a testament to the fact that history isn't just about these grand narratives and these sweeping events. It's also about the lives of ordinary people, the choices they made and the ways they shaped the world around them.
And 847 Fillmore, it's borne witness to it all. It's been this silent observer to the changing face of San Francisco, reflecting the city's its evolution through its own transformations.
And before we move on to kind of our final reflections, I'm actually curious to hear a bit more about the people who've called 847 Fillmore, home over the years. We've talked about some of them, Jungblut, Reeden, Cobb, but who else has left their mark on this house?
That's a great question. We've been so focused on the big events, but I'd love to know more about the individuals who actually lived within those walls, the everyday lives that unfolded there.
Well, the sources they do offer these intriguing glimpses into the lives of some of those previous residents.
Yeah, tell me more. I'm all ears.
Okay, so for instance, during the 1930s, when 847 Fillmore, it wasn't just this meeting place for the YCL. It also served as a social hall, and a boarding house. It must have been bustling with activity.
A social hall and a boarding house. That paints a very different picture of the house. What kind of events, what kind of gatherings were held there?
Well, unfortunately, the sources don't give us specifics, but we can imagine, a mix of social gatherings, maybe some political discussions, maybe even some lively dances. Who knows?
I'm picturing these elegant Victorian rooms filled with people from all walks of life, sharing stories, laughter, maybe even a bit of revolutionary fervor.
It was probably this microcosm of San Francisco society at the time, reflecting the city's its vibrant mix of cultures and political ideologies.
So it wasn't just about these grand political movements, but also about the everyday interactions of people living and socializing under one roof.
Exactly. And it adds another layer to the houses, its tapestry of experiences.
And what happened after the 1930s? Did the house continue to be like a social hub?
Well, it seems like as the political climate shifted and the Red Scare took hold, the nature of gatherings at 847 Fillmore, they probably changed as well.
Right, right. The Red Scare, it would have cast a long shadow over any left-wing activities. Did the house continue to be a boarding house?
It seems so. I mean, the sources mention that in the late 20th century, from 1987 to 2005, 847 Fillmore even operated as a bed and breakfast inn. Charming guests with its unique blend of history and
That's a
hospitality.
bed and breakfast. Wow. I
Yeah.
can see now tourists from all over the world staying in these beautifully restored rooms, having breakfast in the elegant dining room, maybe even hearing ghost stories about the communist meetings and the fire that took out the fourth floor.
I know, right? It sounds like this charming and maybe slightly spooky getaway, and it speaks to the houses, its versatility and its enduring appeal.
And it also highlights the entrepreneurial spirit of the people who owned and operated 847
Yeah.
Fillmore throughout its history, from
Yeah.
billiard table makers to bail bondsmen to bed and breakfast proprietors. I mean, they all had found ways to adapt the house to meet the needs of the time.
Yeah, they did. And it's a real testament to the house's its enduring charm and its adaptability.
Okay, before we wrap up this section, I'm curious about one more detail. We keep mentioning that the house is located in Alamo Square. For those who aren't familiar with San Francisco, could you give us a little bit of background on that neighborhood and what makes it so special?
Sure. So Alamo Square, it's one of San Francisco's most iconic and picturesque neighborhoods. It's known for its beautifully preserved Victorian architecture, including those famous painted ladies that you see on postcards and in movies.
Oh, right, the row of colorful Victorian houses with the San Francisco skyline, in the background. I've definitely seen pictures of those. They're stunning.
Exactly. And 847 Fillmore, it's right in the heart of it all. It's just a stone's throw from those famous painted ladies.
So it's not just a historically and architecturally significant house, but it's also in a prime location in one of San Francisco's like most beloved neighborhoods.
That's right. Alamo Square, it's known for its central location, its vibrant community and those stunning views of the city. It's a very desirable place to live, and 847 Fillmore, it's a real gem within that already exceptional setting.
This has been an incredible journey so far. We've uncovered so much history, so much intrigue, architectural beauty, but I'm sure there are still more stories to be told about 847 Fillmore.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are likely countless stories hidden within those walls. Stories of the people who live there, who work there, who dreamed there. All within those spaces.
And speaking of dreams, before
Yeah.
we move on to our final thoughts, I'd love to hear more about the people who've called 847 Fillmore home over the years. We've talked about some of them, John Blett, Reed, and Cobb. But who else has left their mark on this house?
Well, the sources they give us some intriguing glimpses into the lives of previous residents.
Do tell. I'm all ears.
Okay, so for instance, during those politically charged 1930s when 847 Fillmore was that social hall, that boarding house, it probably hosted a pretty diverse mix of people and events.
Okay, give me some examples. What kind of people, what kind of events are we talking about?
Well, while the sources don't name specific names, it's easy to imagine, this vibrant social scene, that attracted artists, writers, activists, maybe even some figures from the cities. It's more colorful colorful underbelly. I mean, San Francisco, it's always had this kind of bohemian allure, right? It's a place where boundaries were pushed and conventions, they were challenged.
Ooh, a little danger, a little
Yeah.
intrigue. I'm picturing, smoky back rooms with jazz musicians playing, clandestine meetings of political dissidents, maybe even a few, hidden romances blossoming amidst the chaos.
It was a time of real social and political, ferment in 847 Fillmore. It was likely a crucible for those transformative energies.
Makes you wonder if any famous or infamous figures from San Francisco's past might have passed through those doors. Any names come to mind?
Well, the sources they don't mention any specific names, but it's certainly, within the realm of possibility. Remember, San Francisco has always been, this magnet for artists, for writers, for activists, and during the 1930s it was also this real hub for labor organizing and radical
Right.
politics.
So it's not a stretch to imagine that some of those figures might have attended gatherings or even stayed at 847 Fillmore when it was when it was boarding house.
Exactly. It's part of what makes, historical research so exciting. There's always this potential to uncover new connections and new stories to piece together a more complete picture of the past.
Speaking of piecing things together, our sources they also mentioned this fire in 1937 involving this heroic dog named Flash. What's the story there?
Yeah, so the sources they offer this really heartwarming tale of Flash. He was a police dog owned by the Marcus family who were living at 847 Fillmore at the time. And it seems that a fire broke out in the basement while the family was away.
Oh no, was everyone okay? What happened?
Thankfully, Flash was there to save the day. His barking it alerted a passerby who was then able to free the dog and call the fire department. Flash's quick thinking it really prevented a potential disaster.
Wow, a true canine hero. Talk about loyalty and bravery. Did Flash get any recognition for his heroic actions?
Oh, he did. The story was actually featured on the front page of the San Francisco Examiner. They celebrated Flash as the canine hero of Alamo Square.
That's so cool. A local hero, right there at 847 Fillmore. We've explored like so much of its story, right? Its twin, its ties to the Red Scare, the families seeking refuge there during World War II, even that heroic dog that saved the day from the fire. But I feel like there's got to be more. Like, what other hidden tales? What might still be waiting to be discovered within those walls?
There are always more layers to peel back, aren't there? Imagine all the whispers of everyday life that have echoed through those rooms over the years. The laughter of families gathered for celebrations, the anxieties of residents facing eviction, the passionate debates during those secret communist gatherings. It's all part of the house's unseen history.
It's fascinating to think about all those undocumented moments. The personal stories that might never make it into the official records, but they're still woven into the fabric of the house. Do any specific mysteries or unanswered questions kind of stand out to you?
Well, the sources they hinted a few intriguing possibilities. Remember those politically charged gatherings in the 1930s when 847 Fillmore served as that social hall and boarding house. I mean, we can only imagine the diverse mix of people and events that took place under that roof.
I mean, that era in San Francisco, it's such a melting pot of creativity, social change, political ferment. What kind of characters do you think might have been drawn to those gatherings?
Well, the sources don't, they don't name specific names. It's easy to picture, this vibrant social scene, one that attracted, artists, writers, activists, maybe even some figures from the city's, more colorful underbelly. I mean, San Francisco has always had this kind of bohemian allure, right? It's a place where boundaries were pushed, where conventions were challenged.
Yeah, it's kind of tantalizing to think that some famous or even infamous figures from San Francisco's past might have walked through those very doors, right? Leaving behind traces of their presence, maybe in the memories of those who were there.
And it really highlights the limits of historical documentation, right? I mean, so much of life, it happens in the shadows, in those unrecorded moments that really shape our our individual experiences and our collective memory.
Yeah, those undocumented stories, they're like these hidden threads weaving together this richer, more nuanced tapestry of the past. It's a reminder that history, it's not just about, dates and events. It's about the lives of people and the ways they interacted with their environment.
And those interactions, they can be so surprising, so unpredictable. Remember that heartwarming story about Flash, the heroic police dog who alerted that passerby to the fire in the basement?
Oh yeah, Flash, the canine hero of Alamo Square.
Sure.
His quick thinking really saved the day, earned him a spot on the front page of the newspaper.
It's a great example of how these these everyday events, they can intersect with a house's history, adding these unexpected layers of drama and heroism.
And it also reminds us that even in a house as grand and as historically significant as 847 Fillmore, it's often those seemingly small, personal stories that capture our imagination, that connect us to the past.
Absolutely. I mean, it's those details, those glimpses into the lives of ordinary people that really make history, come alive.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into 847 Fillmore Street, I'm left with a real sense of wonder and a newfound appreciation for the power of place. I mean, this house has witnessed so much, from the grandeur of its Victorian beginnings to the challenges of social upheaval, economic hardship, even natural disaster.
Mm.
Yet it stands today as this testament to resilience, to adaptation, to the enduring spirit of a city that never stops evolving.
It's a reminder that even in a place as dynamic and as ever changing as San Francisco, certain landmarks they remain, serving as anchors to the past and as beacons for the future.
And while 847 Fillmore, it's seen so many transformations over the years.
Yeah.
From a grand single family home to a social hall, a boarding house, a bed breakfast, and finally a beautifully renovated modern residence. It continues to hold within those walls the echoes of countless stories, each one a testament to the human experience.
It makes you wonder what stories 847 Fillmore will tell in the years to come, doesn't it? What new chapters will be added to its already rich and fascinating history.
It's a thought-provoking question as we go about our lives. It's worth remembering that we're all part of this larger narrative, this story that's constantly unfolding around us.
Yeah.
And sometimes those stories they're etched into the very places we inhabit, just waiting to be discovered by those who are curious enough to look.
That's right. So as you walk the streets of San Francisco or really any city for that matter, take a moment to really consider the stories held within the buildings you pass. Each one has a tale to tell, a history to unravel, and a connection to the past that might surprise you.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into 847 Fillmore Street. We hope you've enjoyed exploring this remarkable house and the many stories that it holds.
And we hope you continue to be curious, to seek out the hidden histories that surround you, and to appreciate the enduring power of place in shaping our understanding of the world.